What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Eclectic Beard. This go around, taking a look at. Now, this comes from the Infographics Show, and a lot of their stuff is a lot of people in comments always take and hit how they've got inaccuracies and stuff like that. So I decided to take a look at something because I want to take a deeper dive into this subject in general because the whole thing fascinates me. Did Hitler really escape to Argentina? Now, he took and, committed suicide in a bunker with, his wife or mistress there. The thing about it is they never actually recovered the body. Supposedly, they took and they found this, they had, was it DNA analysis, or they did analysis on teeth that were supposed to be his, and the French say yes, they're actually his. He took a cyanide tablet and shot himself in the head, which kind of seems like overkill. It's also been postulated that he actually took an escape to Argentina, and in Argentina there is actually there's more than one resort that was a resort town and villages and stuff like that where Nazis were known to either frequent and actually fled to after World War II. But before the war started and during the war, a lot of, it's basically where they would take in vacation at and stuff like that. So it's been postulated. So I wanted to take a look at this, and this is something I plan on taking deeper dive into, not only this, but also the treasures and stuff like that, the artwork, because just the massive amounts of theft that was done by the Nazis of just untold wealth that's missing, untold amounts of gold, artwork, and stuff like that. Stuff like that fascinates me. Horrendous people, and the fact that they've been basically, there's all kinds of myth that surround the Nazis because everybody's, and rightfully so, they've been immortalized as demonic people in video games. We got Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, which kind of actually jumped off that spawned from Hitler's, or Goebbels taking and sending a guy to actually look for the Holy Grail. So that whole thing, it's fascinating, this amount of obsession with such an evil party, such an evil person, but all of the craziness that they were actually involved in. So right now I'm just going to take a look at Hitler really escaped to Argentina. I just interested to see what they've got to take and say. Like I said, we're going to take a look further into this, as well as other historical stuff that really just fascinates me, because there's so much fascinating stuff to have happened throughout history. So yeah, let's get into this.
Conspiracy theories have been running rampant recently. Sometimes they can be harmless, other times they can cause serious confusion. What would happen if the most evil?
So I love the fact that they started this way with conspiracy theory. Let me tell you something. Conspiracy theory, the term was coined by the CIA back in the 70s as a means of actually taking and discrediting people who had questions about the Kennedy assassination. I love the fact that the character in this is actually holding a newspaper that says fake news. Fake news is a term popularized by Donald Trump. It's just funny how this is all started out with, conspiracy theory. Some of it be harmless, some of it be question everything, folks. Question everything.
Evil man in history didn't die the way we thought he had. What if Adolf Hitler actually escaped his fate and was able to live out his life in relative peace? It's unthinkable, yet some people believe this is what happened. The conventional theory is that Hitler took his own life by cyanide and a gunshot to the head in a Berlin bunker as Soviet forces closed in from all sides. But another theory has been floating around for decades, that Hitler actually escaped Germany and fled to Argentina, where he lived out the rest of his days in secret.
And see, it's got him on a sailboat. The theory is he took and escaped either on a lot, and not so much an ocean liner, but like a larger ship, or a submarine. And there's actually been a submarine that was found off the coast of, I want to say it's between Argentina and Brazil. So, I mean, some of these things aren't as far-fetched when you take a look at the brass tacks of things.
Is there any evidence to support this escape theory? Where did this theory even start? Let's find out. Hitler's death is recorded as being April 30th, 1945. On May 1st, 1945, Supreme Commander of the Navy, Admiral Karl Donitz, who was designated successor to Hitler, officially announced the death of the Führer. That same year, the war came to an end in Europe, and British counterintelligence officer Hugh Trevor Roper was tasked with determining the actual cause of death for Adolf Hitler. To this point in time, the Soviet forces were the only ones in Berlin who had access to the remains of Hitler.
And they actually took custody of the dental stuff that was found afterwards. Like all that was taken back to Russia. One of the things that's postulated is the fact that Hitler used a lot of body doubles. Like he used body doubles. So it's been postulated that it was a body double that was actually found and not Hitler himself.
And they were not very forthcoming with the details of the Führer's death. Not only were the Soviets shady about releasing the information on what happened to
Well, because technically his body was actually never recovered, just dental stuff.
Hitler, but since they refused to hand over any remains or evidence as to what happened to the Nazi leader, rumors started to circulate. Even Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union, was recorded as mentioning that perhaps Hitler had escaped to Argentina after all. This had Hugh Trevor Roper worried. He needed to get to the bottom of what actually happened to the leader of the Axis powers. And as he dug deeper, Trevor Roper found that the disorganization of the Soviets was part of the problem. They may not have been withholding information so much as just misplacing or not knowing where things were. All Trevor Roper knew at this point in time was that the Soviets possessed a statement of Hitler's death. They had conducted an investigation at the bunker where the suicide took place 2 days after it happened, and they had captured key members of the Nazi Party who claimed to be eyewitnesses to the events in said bunker. Trevor Roper worried that the lack of evidence the Soviets were providing may have somehow been motivated by the beginnings of the Cold War. The Soviets may have been posturing and taking credit.
But see, for this to happen, it seems like they're running a whole lot of stuff together on this. Because the Cold War didn't officially actually start until after World War II, after the Soviets took and blocked off Berlin. We had to take it to the drops and stuff like that of aid over there. So I don't like stuff where they don't take and provide a little bit more accurate of, like, they just generalize everything. But Hitler's body was never recovered. He's known to use body doubles. So it's one of those things to where, now I believe it's like 2017, the French say that they took a look at the teeth. They did forensic DNA stuff. And yes, it was Hitler that took and died there in the bunker. But most of his mouth was metal and he only had 4 surviving teeth. So still, even with that right there, there's a lot of doubt because of it.
Credit for Hitler's death as a show of power. Without concrete evidence, Trevor Roper could not be sure. It did not help that the Soviet leaders were uncooperative or forthcoming with information pertaining to Hitler's death. Trevor Roper would wait long periods of time before questions were answered or any tangible evidence was provided. Again, it did not help that the leadership of the Soviet Union was doing very little in public statements to dissuade any conspiracy theories about Hitler's death or provide the public with concrete information to prove that Hitler had killed himself in a bunker. In a public address, Soviet Marshal Zhukov and Colonel General Berzarin went as far as to speculate that perhaps Hitler had escaped from the bunker and was hiding out in Spain. It seemed that even the communication with the Soviet leadership was in conflict, so it was no wonder that Trevor Roper couldn't obtain clear evidence.
See, that's the thing though, something that large, this is my thing. This is the reason why I take stuff like this and I like looking at stuff like this, and the reason why even with this, with the Soviet leaders taking and casting doubt, talking about either Argentina or maybe he took and went to Spain and stuff like that. I can promise you, Stalin knew, hands down. Not only had he met the guy beforehand because they had an agreement in place that Hitler then took and actually, went back on. But he's going to know right off the rip what's going on, because he's going to want to know for sure, is the bastard dead? You know what I'm saying? So they might have come in and found that. So there's not going to be any doubt. It's be one of those things where they know yes, no, for a fact, even with bad communication. The top leaders are going to take a no. So these other leaders and stuff like that, if that's being postulated at the top levels, that's not from bad communication. Stalin knows, and everybody that's around Stalin is going to take a no. If they're postulating, it means they found a body, they got dental stuff, or they pulled what they could so they could do their own investigations, but they're not 100% sure at that point.
The British intelligence officer was unable to make sense of the messaging or lack of the evidence, and concluded that it might have been a tactic used to create suspicion and distrust among Allied forces. This would leave the Soviet Union in a more powerful position as the Cold War started to unfurl. Trevor Roper himself even said, "The infallible Stalin had declared the truth, before which the inconvenient evidence must bow and retire," meaning this misinformation campaign could all be a matter of Stalinist orthodoxy to further the Soviet agenda. Trevor Roper would leave Germany empty-handed, with only speculation and the word of the Soviets that Hitler was in fact dead. The alternative was unthinkable, but the messaging was mixed, and there was no official documents or remains handed over to the British intelligence officer to come to a concrete conclusion. In fact, it would take until 1968 until the Soviets divulged the information that resulted from the detailed investigation they'd conducted at the bunker. The results of the investigation were finally made public, and the cause of Hitler's death as suicide could be confirmed, at least for the time being. So it would seem that the theory that Hitler had escaped with his wife Eva Braun to Argentina started as early as 1945 by the Soviets, right after the war in Europe ended. But there were other aspects that fueled the fire of this conspiracy theory. Even in the United States, people...
in the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years, they've arrested former war criminals in Brazil and Argentina that were high-ranking, officers and stuff like that within the Nazi Party under Hitler. So it's not like this is coming out of left field at all, and it's not like, at least at this point in time, it's not like it's coming out of left field. Granted, there's a lot of stuff going back to 1944, 1968. The Soviets, oh yeah, it was Hitler and stuff like that. But as he's talking about with the, basically trying to take and have misinformation and stuff like that, even with that, like I said, Stalin could say whatever he wanted, but he might take and tell that dude that if all the party officials, it means it's taken and coming from him as well, postulating, then they weren't really sure. And if it took till 1968, okay. I could see it. But that's the reason why all of this is fascinating to me, because there's been so much misinformation and, look over here, but it's over here type stuff because of the Cold War that happened after World War II.
People started believing that American intelligence officials allowed Hitler to escape in return for advanced Nazi technology.
And that's not far-fetched either, because we had so many scientists from the Nazi Party. And I'm not talking about like Einstein and others who actually fled to America. No, we actually took Nazi scientists. They actually conducted experiments for the CIA. And not only that, the U.S. is definitely, their hands are definitely dirty in a lot of stuff. So there's clear credence given to this for certain reasons. It's based in layers of truth that have happened.
In 1945, British newspapers repeated the comments of disinformation from the leaders of the Soviet Union, creating a sense of uncertainty as to what actually happened to Hitler. The papers even reported that the charred body discovered by the Soviets in the bunker was actually a very poor double of the Führer. This rhetoric led to several wild conspiracy theories about Hitler's escape. Some claimed he went to Argentina or Spain, others that he somehow made it to the moon and built a Nazi empire there. However, all credible historians agree that Hitler killed himself on April 30th, 1945 in Berlin. Is there any real evidence to contradict the historical account of what happened to Adolf Hitler? Some rogue researchers would argue that several lines of evidence point to Hitler fleeing to Argentina instead of meeting his ultimate demise in Berlin. There were declassified FBI documents that contained a number of alleged sightings of Hitler after he was supposed to have died. However,
there are still to this day people in Argentina that claim that Hitler was there in Argentina after World War II. So that's not just rogue people. It's not just rogue historians. See, that's the thing I don't like with stuff like this, because in the annals of history, everything is still open to, you know what I'm saying? Science, everything's open for debate for the most part. Otherwise, it's not true science, because you're supposed to question everything. With stuff like this, whenever you've got, there's people that would take, I believe it was up until the 80s. They say he lived in to the not 80s, but like 70s before he died. But there's people in a village there who said he'd come to town and do his shopping and stuff. They said there's no doubt it was Hitler, because even their grandparent or their parents or grandparents had talked about how before the war was over and had started, he would take vacation there. And after the war was over, he took permanent residence there. And this is multiple accounts. So it's not far-fetched. Again, it's the reason why for me it's fascinating, because it's like, how would this be allowed to happen? But then again, with our CIA and stuff like that, any agreements that can be made underhanded.
Mustaches similar to Hitler's, think Charlie Chaplin, were in fashion during the time, and people's eyes and brain can trick them into seeing things that are not actually there.
That's also
just think of how many people see a man's face on the moon.
And probably the most accurate description of what they were seeing. But the fact that you had so many that took and, claimed it was Hitler, that's the fascinating part for me.
Also, the FBI made public statements saying that the sightings of Hitler could not be verified in any credible way. Some other rogue researchers used lack of evidence early on to suggest that Hitler's body was never actually found. This meant that he must have escaped. Unfortunately, forensic methods at the time of Hitler's death were not as advanced as they are today, but recently forensic anthropologists and scientists have gone back to analyze the bone fragments and teeth of Hitler that are housed in Russia. Their findings are very interesting. More recently, the theory that Hitler escaped to Argentina became popular again in 2014 with a book called The Grey Wolf. It seemed like around this time there was no shortage of conspiracy theory shows circulating the television.
And see, they're talking about, it became popular again in 2014. Anybody that takes and looks anywhere close to in-depth at any conspiracy theories whatsoever, this is one of those theories. It's kind of like with Kennedy's shooting, Kennedy's assassination. It's one of those theories that you take and look at, you take and dig into, and you're going to either take and have, oh, he escaped, or oh, he didn't, or you're going to be inconclusive, like, well, I mean, very well he could have died, or very well he could be in Argentina. Either one. But as far as it being, that's kind of disingenuous. It became a popular mainstream theory, like those outside of people that look into conspiracy theory. People that look into conspiracy theory, that's one of those ones where it's like, okay, you know it, and you've got one or two feelings about that conspiracy.
Television networks or books being published. The book Grey Wolf was researched and written by the British authors Simon Dunstan and Gerard Williams. The authors proposed that rather than Hitler killing Eva Braun and himself, he faked their deaths, boarded a U-boat accompanied by a high-ranking Nazi official and treasures collected during the war, and made their way to South America. The authors claimed that Hitler already had connections to the future president of Argentina, Juan Perón, who had received money from the Nazis during World War II.
And there's a ton of stuff in Argentina that is very suspiciously either with Nazi insignia or the architecture. So again, that's the reason why a lot of this conspiracy theory right here, there's so much, regardless of what historians say, because we're told all the time, oh no, this happened, oh no, this didn't happen, oh that's crazy, and conspiracy theory and stuff like that. But there's been numerous times conspiracy theories come out to either be so very close to being what was actually the case, or spot on or even scarily spot on. So it's funny. It's always conspiracy theory until the government goes, yeah, we actually did that crap. So
In Grey Wolf, Hitler makes a daring escape, crosses the Atlantic completely undetected, sails around the tip of South America, and lands in Argentina. He moves around for a bit and then settles to live out the rest of his life quietly and happily, two things that Adolf Hitler was not known for. The book claims Hitler actually died in February of 1962. Just thinking about Hitler's personality, it seems that he would not have been able to contain his enthusiasm for destruction and genocide. He most likely would have tried to carry out this vision of a Third Reich in South America. But like the entirety of the Grey Wolf book, this is just speculation. Dunstan and Williams explained that it may have been possible for Hitler to fund his escape using the treasures he stole from around the world. He may have even been the wealthiest person on the planet during the height of World War II. The funds would have been used to hire the men he needed to flee to Argentina and keep everyone silent about his plans by paying them off. Again, all the evidence that Grey Wolf presents is tentative at best and easily disprovable at worst. In fact, the authors were accused by Argentinian researcher and author Abel Basti for plagiarizing his work. Basti claims that his research was used by Dunstan and Williams without citing him properly. He also claims that they misrepresented some of his research in their book. Basti signed a contract with Williams stating that he would introduce the author to two key witnesses that would provide credibility to his theory. Basti held up his end of the bargain but was never paid by Williams. It doesn't bode well for the reliability of Dunstan and Williams that they used people in Argentina to try to fit evidence into their theory instead of allowing the evidence to speak for itself and coming to a logical conclusion. It also doesn't seem like Dunstan and Williams treated people they hired or other researchers with respect, but that's just an observation. Regardless, Grey Wolf was torn apart by historians and established World War II researchers as soon as it came out. There was no actual evidence in the book that could prove the theory of Hitler escaping to Argentina or contradict history. Around the same time as Grey Wolf, the History Channel premiered a series called Hunting Hitler. The show claimed to have uncovered previously classified documents of interviews with witnesses who claimed Hitler escaped from Germany and traveled to Argentina by U-boat. However, upon scrutiny of the documents by historians, they were debunked. This was not discussed on the Hunting Hitler TV show, which probably led to people...
It's funny because, again, there's a lot of, like I said, this whole thing and the rigmarole surrounding it is so fascinating because of everything involved within not only the people that believe it so fervently, but also those who have who discredit it so fervently. Because it's just fascinating because there's still so much that, number one, can't be explained from one side and can't be explained from other side either. So there's, regardless of everything, there's still going to be this area of folks who can tie every bit of credible stuff they can find to have that, oh, well, just maybe, but just the fact that there's so much stuff that is credible, even with all the stuff taken and proven that he's dead. It's all of this surrounding it is just fascinating in so many different ways. Do I believe he's dead? Yeah, I believe Hitler's dead. Do I believe it was possible that if he wanted to? I completely believe it's possible if he wanted to. There's just too much.
Further spreading unsubstantiated claims that Hitler made it to Argentina. This brings us to the end of the journey down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories about Adolf Hitler escaping to Argentina. So what really happened to Adolf Hitler, and how do we know? That answer is simple. Hitler killed Eva Braun and himself in the Berlin bunker, just like historians have maintained all these years. We know this from several lines of evidence, but it's also okay to trust the experts in their field. Historians have their work peer-reviewed and scrutinized over by other academics. When experts in the field come to a consensus, it's a safe bet you can believe them. But if you want even more evidence that Hitler committed suicide, here you go. In a recent study, French scientists analyzed the fragments of Hitler's teeth that are kept secured in Russia. We know they're his teeth because experts scoured dental records from the Nazi regime and found multiple copies of Adolf Hitler's dental files. The teeth the Russians have are an exact match. At the time of death, Hitler only had 4 real teeth remaining, which are all in very bad shape. Upon analysis, the scientists confirmed that the residue and deterioration of the teeth are consistent with the vegetarian diet that Adolf Hitler ate. They also concluded that Hitler did in fact take cyanide before the gunshot to his head, but it's still unclear if it was enough of the poison to have killed him on his own. Experts have examined the teeth.
And see, the thing with the cyanide, a lot of folks, you take and see stuff, people take, they crunch on the cyanide pill and it's instant death, and that's not exactly the case. A lot of times it can be within a minute or two, but a lot of times it'll also be 30 minutes or hours of excruciating pain and just deterioration before death actually happens. So, like I said, it seems like overkill because you take and do the cyanide, but if the Russians were that close, maybe it just wasn't going to take and do the trick within a minute or two after he took the cyanide pill.
And fragments of the skull concluded that the remains belonged to Hitler, and as the Soviet reports indicated, he was killed by a gunshot wound to the head. All of the evidence corroborates what historians have known for decades. Hitler committed suicide in a Berlin bunker on April 30th, 1945. As it turns out, Hitler's escape to Argentina was just a fabricated myth. It may have just started as a misinformation campaign by Stalin and the leaders of the Soviet Party, or it could have just developed from the media and public wanting a little more excitement in their lives. Either way, there is no concrete evidence to support the escape to Argentina conspiracy theory, and there's ample amount of evidence to support what experts have been saying all along: Hitler committed suicide. Now go watch How Hitler Survived Assassination.
And there we have it. Did Hitler really escape to Argentina? I think he actually, I think he killed himself and stuff like that. But despite what this says, there is a lot of credible stuff that if you take a look at it at face value, yeah, it would make sense that he actually took and escaped. I think he killed himself, because otherwise it's just too crazy to take and think it's too crazy to think that he actually survived and lived out his days to, a ripe old age and stuff like that. It's one thing to vacation somewhere. It's a complete another thing to take and go live somewhere whenever you're already don't like people that aren't your color. Just saying. Like, it's a whole different thing. Granted, he'd be wanted as a war criminal, so all the monies and stuff or all the treasures and stuff like that, he could conceivably take and pay people off to take and keep quiet. There is a lot of stuff to take and at least question. For those that like conspiracy theories, there's enough that makes you question the validity of stuff. But I just find it, I seriously, I find all of this type of stuff just fascinating. Whether there be history, whether there be conspiracy, conspiracy theory brings some interesting stuff up too. Like some stuff with conspiracy theories are so far fetched as to be insane, but some of it, once you take and dig in, it's credible enough to take and make you question actual events of stuff. So, but this right here, this is the whole thing of the Nazi connection to Argentina itself and South America itself, because there was also in Brazil and Paraguay. It's just the whole connection. It's just infinitely fascinating. But that's it for this one. Y'all be good to each other. Love yourselves. Peace.